want to take your guitars from sounding like this to sounding like this. What's up everyone, it's Jacob Brewitt. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to give you some of my tips to have massive sounding guitars. Bring out your pencils and notebooks because we're going back to the basics. Tip number 1, the source material. When I talk about source material, what I'm really talking about is the sound of the amplifier. Your tone to begin with needs to be good. Here's an example of a not very good tone, and then an example of something I think is a good tone. When you're dialing in a tone, you need to keep in mind that the guitar is a mid-range instrument. So when you scoop out all the mids, you're going to be left with something that has no presence, it just muddies up your mix. So keep that in mind when dialing in your tone. So most people have heard of dual tracking, where you track two of the same guitar part and pan them left and right. Well, some people will choose to quad track, or they will have two guitar parts on either side. This can make a big difference when trying to achieve that wall of sound that a lot of people are after. Here's an example of one way that I use quad tracking. Quad tracking doesn't have to always mean that you record 4 of the same guitar parts. Sometimes I like to add octave power chords if I'm playing a power chord riff for my main rhythms. I will go ahead and record the same riff but played an octave up in power chords. It can make for a massive sound. Tip number 3. I usually route all of my rhythm guitar tracks to one bus, so that way I can evenly control all of those tracks at one time. One of the main benefits of doing this is that I can apply compression and EQ to all of my rhythm tracks at once. When using compressors, I like to use a multiband compressor and compress the low ends, so that way when I play palm mutes, those palm mutes don't muddy up my mix at all. When using EQ, this is the template that I usually use, but it's all based on the source material that you use. However, there are a few general guidelines that you want to follow. You'll want a low pass and a high pass filter most of the time. For your high pass filter, it's generally going to be around 80 to 100 hertz depending. Anywhere from 10K to 12K is about where you want your low pass filter. Tip number 4. This is something that not a lot of people think about when they're mixing their music, especially not if you're primarily a guitarist. But your bass tone can really affect the way your guitar sounds, surprisingly. Here's an example of some EQ changes that I made to my bass tone before and after. So you can tell that without changing the guitars and changing the EQ of my bass a bit, that there's a big difference in the way the guitars sound, perceivably. My 5th and final tip for you guys is something that I've been using recently. In some passages where you want to beef up your guitars, you might want to try actually increasing the volume of your kick drum. This can bring more impact to the music overall and help your guitars to sound a little beefier as well. Here's an example of before and after I raised the volume of my kick drum. So there's 5 of my best tips for helping your guitars to sound huge in your mix. These are things that I wish somebody would have told me years ago, but everybody's always learning. So if you have any tips or tricks that anybody could find useful, drop those in the comments below. If you have any other suggestions for videos as well, comment those. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.